No other predator posed a greater threat in this forest than the feral hogs themselves. They tore apart the land, destroyed crops, and behaved with frightening unpredictability. Especially the ones that had previously been wounded, they became even more cautious than before. A tracking operation began at first light, and this time, nothing was as simple as an ordinary hunting trip. In a sparse forest in the state of Texas, feral hog hunts often begin very early, around 6 a.m. We do not move randomly, but instead rely on very specific signs found in nature. Freshly uprooted soil, recently left droppings, or even their distinct scent in the air all reveal their presence. However, feral hogs are extremely alert animals. They can detect humans through scent, sound, or even the slightest movement. That is why we must always remain calm, move slowly, and constantly observe our surroundings to avoid exposing our position. But once we realized the scale of the herd had grown beyond the control of individual hunters, we were forced to shift toward military-style tactics. The approach always begins from the outer edge of the area. We stop to inspect equipment, study the terrain, and determine wind direction. A scouting team moves ahead first, advancing slowly while maintaining distance. The remaining teams enter in space formations, avoiding loud noise. The movement rhythm always follows the same cycle. Move, stop, observe, continue. The objective is not to immediately locate the hogs, but to control the area and determine the position of the entire herd. After that, we continued toward a carefully calculated interception point, a dirt road running through the forest. The team had already arrived earlier, holding positions in an area with better visibility and fewer obstacles. Sparse woodland on both sides provided just enough cover while still allowing us to see through it. We did not move. We simply waited for any sign of activity. Meanwhile, deep within the forest, the herd was gradually being pushed outward. Once they left the dense cover and moved toward the trail, everything entered the control phase. Every decision had to ensure safety, maintain a clear line of sight, and eliminate unnecessary risks. Before the herd reached the interception point, another team quietly approached from the west side. The thick layer of dry leaves meant every step had to be carefully calculated. The team did not move directly forward, but instead advanced in an arc formation, using tree trunks as cover points. We did not apply heavy pressure, only enough to make the hogs feel unsafe and slowly shift toward the predetermined direction. This not only pushed the situation toward the interception point, but also allowed us to respond immediately on site if an opportunity appeared. Just when everything seemed to be going according to plan, an unexpected situation occurred. After being pressured for some time, the final individuals suddenly broke away from the herd's direction and turned back uphill, exactly the survival instinct of animals accustomed to danger. We were forced to react immediately, attempting to cut them off and block them along a narrow trail. Every decision at this moment had to be absolutely precise, because just 1 second too late, and the targets would disappear completely. Once the situation was under control, everything slowly returned to silence. The team began rechecking the entire surrounding area to ensure no risks remained. The equipment was packed away, and the captured animals were handled carefully to avoid affecting the surrounding environment before we climbed into the Toyota Land Cruiser and returned to base. Because the level of destruction and cunning had exceeded ordinary control measures, professional teams using organized strategies were brought in. Vehicles such as tracked machines, ATVs, and UTVs were used to move through difficult terrain. In cases of deep mud or unstable ground, excavators and small bulldozers were deployed to clear paths, reinforce the terrain, and create access routes. Large trap systems, surveillance cameras, and portable power sources were also established to maintain long-term control over the area. Every team member receives formal training in reconnaissance and situational response. We are trained in observation, planning, and teamwork. Every mission involves clearly assigned roles, from scouting and area control to handling unexpected situations. Discipline and patience are essential factors, preventing us from acting recklessly and ensuring we always wait for the right moment. And when that moment arrives, the most important factor is stability. We must keep our bodies steady and minimize unnecessary movement. Vision must remain clear, focus on a specific point rather than wandering aimlessly. Breathing is carefully controlled to avoid affecting our actions. Every movement is deliberate and controlled, never rushed. Everything ends as cleanly as it began, and by the next day, the forest once again returns to its natural silence. But we understand one thing clearly. This work is never truly finished. In the end, what determines success is not luck, but careful preparation. My father always said wild boars don't wander aimlessly. They follow familiar routes, yet still adjust with the weather, food sources, and their sense of safety. When their numbers grow, the damage they cause affects not only the harvest, but the lives of people in the surrounding area. Perhaps that's why controlling them is sometimes necessary. I never liked my father's work. To me, it always seemed exhausting and hard to understand. But it was curiosity that led me to join him on this trip, to see with my own eyes what he had been doing all these years. The morning began with a thick layer of fog covering the hillside. Limited visibility made observation more difficult. In these conditions, wild boars tend to expand their range, feeling less disturbed by outside factors. We focused on reading the environment. Fresh tracks on wet grass, shifts in wind direction, the slightest movements along the forest edge. When the target emerged through the mist, it didn't hinder my father from carrying out a precise control action. Phew, he had just prevented potential damage to the villagers' crops. As the fog slowly lifted, the boars entered their most active feeding period. Small groups left their shelters, moving along familiar trails. If these groups merged, the pressure on the surrounding environment would quickly increase. Instead of direct intervention, the control team focused on maintaining the natural separation between groups. This approach helps stabilize their behavior, limiting sudden changes that could lead to more serious conflict. In wildlife management, maintaining behavioral stability is often more important than aggressively reducing numbers. As sunlight became clearer, the terrain was easier to observe. Some individuals moving close to cultivated areas were identified. Intervention at this stage was carried out selectively, with the goal of reducing the risk of contact between wild boars and residential zones. When risk factors are adjusted in time, the herd tends to shift direction and avoid sensitive areas for the rest of the day. For now, peace has been preserved on this land. As the sun climbed higher, rising temperatures pushed the boars toward cooler, less exposed areas. They began moving in larger groups. The growing number of animals forced us to quickly reassess the situation and act in time, because if the herd broke through downhill, the harvest would be completely lost. On another hillside, my father's teammate reported over the radio that an adult boar had been spotted resting in an open area. This individual had the greatest influence on the herd's behavior, had the most significant impact on the surrounding environment. Managing this case required careful, location-specific assessment. We moved quickly before it could sense any danger. The goal was not to expand intervention, but to reduce long-term pressure on both the ecosystem and the community. Every decision was made with care, avoiding unnecessary disturbance to other species. In the end, the area returned to a temporary state of calm. Our journey began to draw to a close as the sunset quietly faded behind the tree line. Through a spotting scope, we detected a lone individual making its way back toward the herd. Without hesitation, my father took position and handled the situation decisively. It was a large boar, solid, powerful, but in that moment, it became the final target of the day. In those final moments, I found myself reflecting on who I am now, and I began to understand more clearly the work my father has quietly devoted himself to all these years. This is not simply a hunt. It is a necessary task that helps protect local farmers from crop loss, reduces economic damage, and preserves the balance of the ecosystem. Because if wild boar populations grow too quickly, they will continue to destroy crops, land, and the peaceful lives of those who depend on it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to continue this journey of protecting the harvest. There are nights when farmers stay awake not because of the weather, but because of the rustling sounds at the forest's edge. It only takes one herd of wild boars charging down to turn hectares of corn and rice, just days from harvest, into flattened ground before sunrise. Early in the morning, the entire team loaded equipment onto an old Ford Ranger, pushing through rough dirt roads straight toward the hotspot. We split into 3 specialized groups: tracking, recon, and interception. Let me be clear, this is not a recreational activity. This is a structured, disciplined management operation aimed at protecting the safety of communities at the foot of the mountain. To locate the herd, the tracking team relied entirely on ground signs. They carefully studied freshly disturbed soil and deep hoof prints pressed into dry areas. Wild boars tend to follow familiar trails. By reading these signs, the team could accurately predict their direction. Once signs were confirmed, the tracking team applied pressure from behind, forcing the animals to change direction, pushing them away from routes leading down to the fields. Realizing their main path had been cut off, the herd retreated into dense brush to hide. The area formed a perfect natural camouflage, completely limiting human visibility. At that point, the tracking team released trained dogs. Their keen sense of smell became the most effective tool to locate and flush out stubborn boars. While the dogs worked through the undergrowth, team members positioned themselves downwind, standing guard at the forest edge. Safety rules here are strict. Wait patiently. Only when the dogs push the animals into a clear, isolated space can the situation be handled, ensuring no risk to either humans or the dogs. Pressure from the brush forced the boars out into a long grassy stretch along the forest edge. The interception team was already in position. We wore high visibility orange gear, a mandatory safety standard in the United States to ensure clear identification in the woods. When a boar appeared, its calm behavior showed it was familiar with the terrain. Moments later, it dropped, no longer a threat to the crops. You may notice the use of suppressed equipment in wildlife management. This is standard practice to minimize noise pollution, avoid stressing other animals, and prevent disturbance to nearby residents. After securing the outer perimeter, we moved deeper into the forest to locate the rest of the herd. There, we encountered the most critical target, the lead boar. This large individual guided the herd's movement, determining direction at every step. It paused frequently, sniffing the air. Wild boars have an exceptionally sharp sense of smell. The entire team froze in place, maintaining complete silence. We had to wait patiently for the lead boar to lower its guard before handling the situation safely. Removing the lead animal would disorient the rest, making the herd easier to manage. Once the leader was gone, the herd structure broke apart. The remaining boars scattered toward the farm boundary. A small group attempted to cross a dirt road, the final line before reaching nearby crops. Wild boars can travel dozens of miles in a single night searching for food. Knowing this, The interception team had already established a defensive line along the road. By holding their positions, they successfully prevented the herd from crossing, completely cutting off the risk of damage to neighboring farms. The final moments of the operation unfolded along a narrow trail, where the last individuals were cornered. When pressured, wild boars instinctively choose the easiest path and sometimes charge forward with tremendous force. Relying on professional training and steady nerves, the team member held position and handled the situation safely right on the trail. That decisive action officially brought the mission to a close.
Now on the fields, the traces left by the wild boar herd, with claws sharp as knives, have ravaged the land that the farmers have meticulously cultivated over the past months. The livelihoods of many families are at risk of being wiped out. There's no other option but to rise up and face these invaders. It's not just a battle with nature, but a fight for survival, for hope, and to protect every inch of land that belongs to the community. The vehicle rumbled across the rugged roads, bringing us closer to the fields of southern Brazil. From a distance, we could already spot the wild boars. The engine's roar startled them, sending them charging ahead. Nick quickly maneuvered the vehicle, creating the perfect distance for me to act. Everything happened like second nature. The shots rang out, each one finding its mark, dropping the targets one by one. Within minutes, the field fell silent again, the once vibrant figures now still, marking a strong start to today's hunt. After our perfect collaboration, we realized that moving by vehicle would alert the prey. We abandoned the truck, each step taken quietly, searching every corner with caution. Just 10 minutes in, the hounds had already caught the scent. With their well-honed tactics and training, they quickly surrounded the prey. My steps quickened as I closed in, just within range, and the shot rang out. Accurate! The threat to the field was stopped in time, securing the life here. As I dealt with my target, to the east of the field, John had quickly spotted another boar thanks to the sharp nose of his hounds. With the ideal distance and precise guidance from the pack, John brought down the giant boar in the blink of an eye. Before we could even catch our breath, another figure appeared. John immediately charged forward, racing up the hill. Though the boar tried to flee, it couldn't escape the well-placed shot, bringing the chase to a swift end. Realizing the situation had changed, John signaled for me to advance and intercept the targets hiding on the hillside. After splitting into positions, we quickly set up a new formation, each step deliberate as we moved forward. Predicting there would be wild boar in this area, I moved straight ahead to intercept. Sure enough, it arrived. Aiming carefully, I squeezed the trigger. The shot hit its mark. Every step, every decision was calculated. Victory was achieved through precision and patience. The open areas always provide the golden opportunity for quick targeting and locking in on the prey. Therefore, Nick's team was assigned to handle the boars hiding there. Soon after, gunshots rang out, signaling another successful attack. Just when we thought everything was over, a signal came through about the prey's location. This time, the situation was tougher than ever. Although John had taken decisive action, the boar stubbornly escaped. I quickly closed the distance, each step light and careful, avoiding detection. Then, a sharp shot echoed, precisely hitting the target, bringing down the massive creature. The destruction was halted, securing the peace for this place. Hunting wild boar is not just about bringing down the prey, but about the art of reading their movements, allowing us to deploy precise strategies and achieve the desired outcome.
We are a specialized wild boar control team operating in the state of Georgia. The team was formed as a solution to a persistent problem that local farmers have faced for many years. Beyond destroying crops, they also act as carriers of more than 30 dangerous diseases and parasites, posing a direct threat to livestock health and national food security. In the absence of strong natural predators in the United States, Implementing professional population control measures has become an essential ecological management task. The early morning mist still blankets the path as our team splits into two smaller units, forming a crescent-shaped encirclement. Tension fills the air. Suddenly, the barking erupts from deep within the brush. Our dogs have cornered the target. There it is. A dark figure bursts out. Instinct takes over. In that split-second confrontation, absolute focus allows me to control the situation, helping protect the farmer's fields from further destruction. After the gunshot echoes, an eerie silence takes over. But on the GPS tracking device, blinking signals reveal that the herd is scattering in panic, fleeing toward the western brush. A sudden downpour begins, but it works in our favor. The sound of rain masks our footsteps, allowing us to close in undetected. Rain cannot stop determination. We shorten the distance quickly. Driven by the dogs, the boars are pushed straight toward my position, desperately seeking an escape. Not so fast. This is where precision matters most. I cannot waste the effort of the dogs that have worked tirelessly. The rain subsides, leaving behind damp air and the heavy scent of forest oil. While Team A tightens the encirclement below, Team B takes position along the hillside. There, right there, an overwhelming herd of wild boars suddenly surges out. So many that they darken an entire section of the hill, charging forward like a flood. Some attempt to break away in the opposite direction. The chaos could overwhelm the inexperienced. But at this moment, a clear mind is everything, prioritizing visible targets to maintain control. Gunshots crack sharply from the hilltop, sending the herd into complete disarray. A few of the strongest individuals break through, sprinting down into the valley. But they don't realize team members are already waiting in ambush. What lies ahead is not an escape, but the end. It is the seamless coordination and constant communication between team members that leaves no gaps for the boars to exploit. Sunlight returns after the rain, bringing with it a stifling heat. We continue deeper into the forest, tracking individuals that have split from the herd. Despite the discomfort, focus never wavers. Footprints and scent remain the key indicators. There they are. We immediately execute the standard control procedure, ensuring there is no chance for them to regroup or pose unexpected danger to others in the forest. The operation continues with unwavering concentration. Then the radio crackles. A dominant boar has been spotted moving toward a nearby hillside. We move immediately. The oppressive heat fades from awareness as the importance of this target takes over. With older, more experienced individuals, patience is critical. One wrong move, and the target disappears into the forest without a trace. All attention narrows to this decisive moment. Successfully controlling this individual plays a key role in stabilizing the herd structure. Once all targets are safely handled, we begin packing up and checking equipment. Climbing back onto the Jeep Gladiator, a sense of relief and quiet pride settles over the team. The demanding operation comes to a successful close. The seamless coordination between humans, technology, and our four-legged partners has delivered an outstanding result. The early season heat of 85 degrees Fahrenheit was blanketing the Pyrenees Mountains in the province of Lleida, Spain. Our wildlife management team had just been invited by local authorities to help address a growing crisis. Steep terrain, deep ravines, and dense pine forests waited ahead of us. There would be no room for hesitation. Join us as we step into today's demanding control operation. I was standing on a rocky outcrop at the top of the ridge. When pressured, wild boars instinctively run uphill to escape. My task was to lock down the upper route while using the high vantage point to relay positions to the team below. Binoculars in hand, I swept the brush continuously. Movement. A boar was sprinting hard, climbing toward the opposite slope exactly as expected. I held my breath, tracking every heavy stride. The moment it entered the open, I acted. A sharp crack tore through the valley. The target dropped. The sudden report sent the rest of the herd into panic. They abandoned the summit route, turned sharply, and charged downhill into the pine forest below. The update was sent immediately over the radio, so the team beneath could prepare the interception. After receiving the warning, Antonio had already moved into position among a field of jagged rocks. We had placed him there deliberately because the terrain formed a natural bottleneck. Any animal fleeing from the summit into the valley would be forced to pass through this narrow point. The heat was draining every ounce of strength, but focus had to remain absolute. He listened carefully, stones shifting, dry branches snapping. They were close. Antonio raised his optics to eye level. From the tall grass, a boar burst forward at full speed. No hesitation. One decisive action. The movement ended instantly. Every target controlled meant one less burden for the farmer's labor. At the foot of the hill, not far away, Carlos was waiting. This was the classic hammer and anvil tactic. The trained dogs were the hammer, driving the boars out of hiding, while Carlos was the anvil, holding the forest boundary. The relentless barking of the dogs echoed across the landscape, the perfect signal that the targets were being pressed into a corner. Carlos drew a deep breath, eyes fixed on the tree line. Suddenly, a huge dark shape exploded from the brush. Instinct took over. He pivoted, locked on, and reacted in a flash. Another threat removed. At 1:45 p.m., the temperature reached its peak. The dogs were panting heavily and had to stop for water. The dogs, equipped with GPS collars, were sent in again to apply pressure from within and force movement into the open. I stood on the hill, muscles tight, sweat stinging my eyes. One boar emerged from the brush. I seized the moment, but its endurance was remarkable. It took several more follow-up actions before the target could be fully recovered. Step by step, order was being restored to this land. At 3:20 p.m., Antonio's next task was to seal off a dirt trail leading along the slope. When wild boars become exhausted, they choose the easiest path, available. This road was the perfect corridor for crossing from one forest block to another. Then the dogs began barking again. A good sign. He slowed his breathing, keeping his mind perfectly still amid the chaos of sound around him. There, the herd burst across the opening of the dirt road in panic. A sharp report rang out, and one individual fell immediately. 5:10 p.m. The sun was beginning to drop. GPS signals and fresh tracks in the soil showed that the dominant boar was still hiding. Then suddenly, from the upper slope, the lead boar charged downhill, tusks flashing. My heart pounded. Stay with its speed. One final perfect action closed the day. When we approached, the massive target, weighing nearly 300 pounds, had been fully controlled. Removing this leader was a major blow to the herd's unchecked expansion. The greatest threat had been eliminated, extending peace to this land one step further. We had to move fast to recover everything before local vultures swooped in to claim it, loading it onto the Land Rover Defender for the return trip. An exhausting day had come to an end, and quiet had returned to the Valley of Lida. What do you think about this push-and-drive strategy in such harsh terrain? Share your thoughts below, and do not forget to subscribe for more intense field operations ahead. I had never seen a herd of wild boars that large. They appeared almost every night, pouring into the farm, destroying row after row of crops, tearing apart land that had taken us months to build. At first, I thought a few shots would be enough to drive them away. But I was wrong. Their numbers were too great. And that was when I realized if we kept hunting them the usual way, we would never bring the situation under control. We needed something different. A trap, big enough to stop an entire herd. We began by surveying the whole area. The trails the boars used most often, the low ground, the points they were forced to cross in order to reach the farm. And then an idea appeared. If we could not chase them, then we would let them run into the trap themselves. The very next day, we brought heavy machinery onto the farm. Engines roared across the quiet fields as long sections of earth were carved deep into the ground. We were not digging a single pit. We were building an entire defensive trench system around the farm. Deep ditches curved across the land, like a protective boundary around everything we had built. Everything had to look natural, so those clever wild boars would have nothing to suspect. All that remained was to wait for them to return. After hours of patience, the herd finally appeared and entered the perimeter. We closed the circle at once. The boars erupted into panic. They turned back, searching for escape, but every direction was blocked. The pressure intensified. No choices left. The entire herd suddenly charged toward the open field, exactly where we had planned. I knew what was about to happen. The leaders accelerated, throwing all their strength into one desperate escape. And then, without a single warning sign, one misstep, their heavy bodies dropped straight into the deep trench below. The sound of breaking earth and violent impact echoed in rapid bursts. Those behind could not stop in time. They slammed into one another, slipped, stumbled, and followed them down. In only a few seconds, the entire herd had fallen into the trap we had prepared long before they arrived. When everything slowly became quiet again, I walked to the edge of the trench and looked down below. The whole herd was now completely contained. They were still panicked, packed tightly together, struggling to climb out, but the walls of earth were too steep. Every effort was useless. No one said a word. We simply stood there, watching, because we all understood the hardest part was over. But what came next was what truly mattered. Handling a herd that large is never simple. It takes time, it takes planning, and it has to be done carefully. I looked at my teammates. No one needed to speak. Everyone already knew what had to be done next. But we did not rush, because this time, the prey had nowhere left to run, and the way we handled them next would decide everything.
Central Florida backcountry, where the thick palm forests and muddy wetlands create the perfect battleground for wild hogs to run rampant. These beasts multiply fast, invading gardens, wrecking irrigation systems, and leaving heavy damage in their wake. Faced with the threat of losing entire crops, landowners turn to us, hoping to reclaim their land from this invasion. A challenging hunt lies ahead. Join us as we embark on this heart-pounding pursuit. Before dawn fully breaks, our truck quietly rolls toward the forest where the wild hogs usually begin their destruction. With seasoned experience, we know their habits and active hours inside out. Every detail is meticulously planned, each step, each breath, carefully measured as we move into ambush positions. Minutes later, the target reveals itself. Steady on the bead, I squeeze the trigger. Quick, clean, decisive. The beast drops instantly. That opening shot, dead on, fuels our resolve to restore peace to this land. We press silently deeper into the forest, tracking fresh hog prints in the damp earth. Not a sound escapes as the team locks onto the trail, eyes sharp, scanning every palm thicket and shadowed nook. "There it is," I whisper. Like muscle memory, I raise my rifle, line up the shot. The gun cracks, a clean hit, and the hog falls on the spot. Elsewhere, Kevin skillfully sets bait to lure the herd into view, choosing an ambush point with clear sightlines. As the hogs gorge, he quietly takes aim at the biggest one. A shot rings out, the target drops, and chaos erupts among the rest. Seeing Kevin's tactic work so well, we quickly expand our trap network and split up to cover key spots. This section is ours to protect. Once again, hogs fall into our traps, and with swift, decisive shots, we neutralize more threats, helping preserve this land from destruction. Meanwhile, at a frequent hog crossing, Kevin's crew stands ready. The moment targets appear, a precise shot drops one. The rest panic and bolt, but every escape route is blocked. Ready rifles cut off their getaway, ending their desperate flight. Following tracks, Kevin freezes, spotting a large gathering of hogs. Without hesitation, he fires, taking down one beast. Quick on the reload, he tries to press the attack, but the herd outsmarts us, slipping deep into the woods. Determining the direction, Kevin signals us to move deeper into the dense jungle where the hogs vanished. The tangled terrain and thick brush make tracking nearly impossible, if not for our hunting dogs. Guided by the dog's barks, suddenly, a giant hog bursts out. Instinct kicks in. Finger tightens on the trigger. The beast drops cold. Pushing through dense palms, we hunt down the survivors hiding nearby. More sharp shots ring out, each one a message. This land is no longer safe ground for wild hogs.